if everybody has their area of business that rolls up to those targets, then you're all accountable to a point, right? But it has to be specific. If it's biz dev bringing in X amount of new business or negotiating new margins so that revenues tick up to a certain place in this category, or if marketing has to bring in, X number of new visitors to the site, like everybody has specific metrics that should ladder up to the bigger business goals. That's what performance reviews are all about, right? Is having specific targets that all tie to one goal. I mean, not every company does that, but if you don't, you should, because that's how you build real accountability across teams, across departments, and that's how you hold people accountable. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's part of the job.
Hello, everyone. How are you, possibility seekers? We're back, and today we have a special guest and a special format. We're going to be talking about business, as they say, the business of the business. So today I have with me Stephanie Baker. Let me tell you who she is and what she's about. She's a senior executive of more than 20 years experience leading commercial strategy, operational transformation, and growth across travel, entertainment, and consumer sectors. Most recently, Stephanie served as Chief Commercial Officer at EBG, one of the largest privately held travel and entertainment companies in the United States, where she led product strategy, corporate sales, business development, marketing, digital customer experience, and partner development. Previously, she also held roles of Chief Operating Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. Over her 14 years at EBG, Stephanie was instrumental in scaling the business, integrating acquisitions, launching new digital platforms, and deepening key industry partnerships. Earlier in her career, she held senior leadership roles at Madison Square Garden Entertainment and Feld Entertainment, where she drove marketing strategy, production growth, and international expansion across Europe. She is known for her strategic clarity, customer-centric approach, and ability to align teams around complex growth initiatives. Stephanie also serves on the board of Iron Eagle Advisory Board and is a board member of Thrive Women in Travel and is a member of Chief. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Let me tell you, this is going to be a great conversation. You and I could talk for hours.
We could,
literally. Literally. Yeah. So people listening, what we're going to do is we're going to start dissecting what our, I don't want to do the math because then it'll be scary. Our collective years of experience have taught us. But between us, there was decades worth of stuff. I personally represent a lot of decades. I'm not going to go into how many.
I do as well.
So we've seen a lot of this company is growing moments that turned out to be this company is actually falling apart moment. And I think with age and with experience and expertise, you can kind of snuff this stuff out a little bit more quickly and a little bit more succinctly. What is the thing that now, because I love the fact that you have a duality, COO and CMO. You see this coming like a train. What do you now spot in the first 30 days that you used to potentially miss earlier on in your career?
I'm going to answer that directly, but let me kind of back up. So, over the course of my career, I've actually met a lot of founders and I've had the chance to hear what they're pitching or listen to what their business is. And I learned one really important question to always ask. What is your business model? Right? How do you make money? And, you can have as much hype, social media engagement, PR, momentum as you want, but if you're not actually like producing revenue, that's a problem. So I think, you need to really understand, what do the customers like our product? And if they do, how are we going to scale it? So, and now just to flip, the opposite could happen, right? You could be oversaturated. You could devalue your brand. You could be really in a bad place where you're just talking about all these ideas and nothing is coming together because you're just hyping it up. And so what I always say, and why, to go back to answering your question, It's like, what do the numbers tell you? And how is revenue pacing? And is there growth? And how is our growth trajectory headed? And so, you have to ask, is there something blocking us? Can we overcome this? Do we actually agree on a strategy forward? And sometimes the issue is too much of that, right? Not enough action, too much paralysis analysis. So I think what I've learned to see, to get specific with you, and to answer your question is that sometimes there's a lack of alignment, right? Like, everybody doesn't agree with the direction that the company is supposed to be headed. There isn't enough transparency around what that business model is, right? That's that first question I ask. Does everybody understand that? And then there could be just some misalignment about the strategy. Some everybody's going in different directions. And as I said, with that oversaturation, too much rah-rah language, right? Not enough specifics and very specific strategies and tactics that are tied to measurable results, tangible, measurable results.
Listen, I think for me, it's when I meet the C-suite and this every C-suite person has a different agenda or a different view of what the future looks like. One wants to do the mass play, one wants to do the niche play, one wants, premium pricing, and the other one wants mass pricing to for saturation and market growth and penetration. And I'm like, you can't have it all.
That's misalignment right there, right? It's like we all think, and it's fine. It's great to have a ton of ideas, but at some point, that debate has to turn into real strategy, and that strategy has to turn into action.
Exactly, and who gets the last word? Because if he says this thing and she says this thing right now I'm facing the fact that I have a client, will remain nameless. There are too many chiefs and not enough executors. And, as the agency, you're like, "Okay, so who's running point on strategy? Because this is not going to grow this segment of your business. This what you're asking for right now will actually have a negative impact on your other division." So the guy that's running that division doesn't really not really in the room, but he's gonna get impacted, so what's happening here?
I mean, I think that's when you have to decide who is calling the shots on strategy. And I think what's really hard for executives is kind of that holding back, right? You think, all right, this is the direction we're going. I'm just going to get on board, but I don't agree with it. That's the worst kind of executive, is the one who is behind the scenes poo-pooing the idea, but in the meeting says, yes, yes, yes. That's very toxic to the organization. And so I think, in your case or in anyone's case who's listening, you have to be very clear with who's making the decision. And then the buck stops with all of us, right? It can't just be that one person who's being hung to dry. I mean, that's what teamwork is about. And it's great to sit here and talk about it, but when you're really dealing with real issues and real people, it's not always easy. But it's it's gotta get done.
You're absolutely right. So on another topic, it's like I've heard this so many times and I live this every day. We need more leads. We need more sales. We need more sales. We need more leads. Ah! We need more sales. We need more leads. Screaming top of their lungs. We need more sales. We need more. It's actually usually not really the case. What's usually the real issue? There's usually a lack of distinction and differentiation, and they don't know who they are. And so the problem is you're not attracting the leads, you're not attracting the customers that you need to be attracting and leads that you need to be getting because people in the industry, in the market do not know what you stand for.
And so your target who you're targeting isn't clear, right?
Correct. Your ICP is not clear, your ideal customer profile. And are you really penetrating, saturating, and growing the share of wallet amongst your big fans? Your low-hanging fruit is your current customers. Do you have 25% of their wallet? Why don't you look for 75% of their wallet? Go where you know people already love you. It's like the bright shiny object. It's like, I need new customers. I need new customers. I need new customers. Have you saturated the ones that you already have?
Well, and are the customers that you already have satisfied with you? Will they come back? Will they refer you to somebody else? I think that is an area. And maybe, you know what? Maybe it's not maybe we say new, new, new because that's not so sexy, right? The cost and the strategy to go back and build some loyalty with that customer, it takes a little bit longer, it's a little bit harder, it's probably a little bit harder to quantify, but you're right. I mean, find those people who love you and then find more of them and get those folks to go and tell everybody else about how great you are.
Exactly. So if I have 2 and here's the other thing. Are you really, really clear that your customer profile is really, really clear? Because you may have 5 different ICPs that you think you're ICPs, but they're not. They have to have something in common. Stage, industry, business model, something. They have something in common that you can say, "I need more of that." And so when you go fishing, you're not spreading chum all over the ocean. You're like, this is a pond that you're spreading chum in, and you're gonna get the bites because it's very clear that you know what you're doing in that space, in that market, in that whatever it is, in that industry, whatever. And so, it's just like the whole thing about we need leads, it's making me crazy right now.
Well, I think it's also important to define what success looks like, right? Is it just filling the top of our pipeline? Would that be a win? I mean, it depends on where your business is, right? Maybe it would be. Or is it to convert at a higher rate, right? Do we have a great pipeline, we're bringing people in, but we're not converting well enough, right? Or to the point you made earlier, are we not even telling people who we are, right? Is our message not translating? So I think you know, it is. I think the reaction is real, right? We just talked about it's all about the numbers. That's a real reaction. I mean, I've been in that place. So that's where you start, but it's having the ability to pull back a little and then start to dissect where in the funnel that problem is coming from and then really target in on it. So we have good things to share with your clients, right?
We do, we do. I'm like, I'm actually trying to figure out a way. I want to identify a client where I can bring you in and we could have such a good time because we would like we'd be like straightening that shit right out. Anyway, so from the COO side, when you walk in and the org chart looks fine on paper, and you know within a week that it's completely wrong for where the company really needs to go or needs to be, how do you navigate that conversation?
Well, and I've been there, right? We did a lot of acquisitions in my last organization, and I also went from being a domestic promoter with Feld to an international promoter. I mean, what I've learned is you have to ask a lot of questions, and you have to get really curious, and you have to ask questions not just about, what's in front of you, but what's the process? How is the sausage made, as we used to say, right? And try to understand why things actually work the way they do. And are there any gaps? I mean, could things be working better? Is there any duplication, right? Are there things that this person's doing and this person's doing? So you have to do this across the organization, right? And then what I've learned to do is you reverse engineer all of that back to the org chart, right? So you really can then see, okay, this is what everybody told me. This is how the process works, but this is how the structure is set up. And, what I've seen is oftentimes people get put into roles because, hey, maybe there wasn't enough money a few years ago, or maybe they just stepped into a role. And then the question is, well, that's just how it works, right? Because that's how it's always been. But it doesn't mean it's always right. So, you know, then thinking about how are we going to change titles and roles, and that's sensitive. I mean, people hold those titles very dearly. How it worked is how it works. So I think, you've got to take what you learn, you've got to take the people you have, and you have to tie it back to the business strategy and the business goals. And then I believe it's much easier to talk about where people sit and what responsibilities everyone has to tie actual accountability to roles and responsibilities, right? Because you've tied it back to something measurable and tangible. And then there's more transparency around this why. Oh, why is this position here? Why is this person responsible for that? Well, because we figured out that that's the best place for it to sit. But it takes time, and it's not a comfortable conversation, but it's an important one.
Yeah, and as a consultant, I think it's easier personally, it's probably easier to deliver that kind of message when you're a consultant than when you're inside and you're dealing with the machinations of people's egos and so on, and honestly, I've seen org charts where it's like, "Well, this one didn't want to report to this one." Oh, I love that, I love that. Well, we created that job around her because that's what she likes to do. I'm like, "Seriously?" I don't understand, and I really don't. I've never been good at understanding how people are allowed to say, "I will not work for you. I will not do that. I will not do this." I'm like, "Wait a minute. Who makes you in charge?" Like, if you wanna run your own company, then you do the way you wanna do the way you do. But if you're working for somebody else, and especially if it's a publicly held company, and you're on an org chart, you freaking do what the company needs you to do or get the hell out.
I mean, the phrase that gets said a lot, and I know people don't like to hear it, but if it's sincere, is we have to do what's best for the business. And, I know it sounds a little cliche, but that's why you go back to what's the strategy? Where are we trying to take the business? And if putting people in certain positions helps achieve that goal, then it makes sense. So I think, what I've noticed has changed is more transparency around those conversations so that people don't feel, bad or alienated or, "Hey, my work isn't being noticed." It's like, "No, everybody understands where we're trying to go. So, I'm just showing you, and you can fit in here, and we will happily take your contribution."
Right. The other thing that I noticed too is the duplication of responsibility, but not accountability. For instance, you've got the COO and the CMO and the chief. Now there's like all these titles as chief client officer, chief experience officer. You're like these things. They're smack in the middle of a Venn diagram with four other people.
Who owns it?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through this, and I think in some cases, if everybody has their area of business that rolls up to those targets, then you're all accountable to a point, right? But it has to be specific. If it's biz dev bringing in X amount of new business or negotiating new margins so that revenues tick up to a certain place in this category, or if marketing has to bring in, X number of new visitors to the site, like everybody has specific metrics that should ladder up to the bigger business goals. That's what performance reviews are all about, right? Is having specific targets that all tie to one goal. I mean, not every company does that, but if you don't, you should, because that's how you build real accountability across teams, across departments, and that's how you hold people accountable. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's part of the job. I'll say just to say this so that nobody thinks I'm crazy. I did get this feedback once that I am direct. So that was a direct statement I just made, but that I'm fair. And I do believe in that, right? I think if that's why I go back to transparency. If it's clear what you're responsible for, if we've set those goals and you understand them, then when you're not meeting them and we have to talk about, hey, why aren't you meeting them? That's a fair way to deal with a very direct and specific target that you've been set. And also, last thing I'll say, just again to sound kind and compassionate, because I am that kind of person, that's where you start to ask for help. If you're in an organization where you've gotta get to a certain place and you're challenged, you've tried different things, it's not working, maybe it's the team, maybe it's a vendor, maybe it's the strategy, you don't know. You gotta be able to communicate that back, and if you're working for somebody that you can have that conversation with, hopefully they're gonna help you because everybody wants success. You don't wanna see somebody fail.
So true. And so what, this is one of my favorite questions. When a company says we need a rebrand, what are they really trying to fix? And when does a rebrand fail, even when the creative and the execution is solid?
Okay, this is what I would say. I mean, obviously, that's a tricky question, right? And I think it can mean a lot of things, right? It could mean we need to rethink our product. We need to re-energize our product, right? And I would tie re-energizing to look and feel, which I'd tie to the brand. Or the brand has aged and maybe you're not who you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. But and I'd say if the brand is not central to the product, right? That is a lever anyone's gonna say to raise their hand, be like, "That's the problem, it's the brand," right? If it's not central to the product. So, I think the question that really should be asked in these situations, and I'm sure this is what you do day in and day out, is, well, how do your customers respond to your product? What do your customers say about your product or your service, excuse me, your service. Do they care about it? Do they like it? Are they using it the way you intended them to use it? Um, I think that those are the things you need to ask. Now, on the flip side, if your business is totally pivoting, if you're going into new territories, if you're adding all new services or product lines and they don't represent the brand, then yeah, you might need to evolve your brand, right? But the thing that I think we always have to remember, and this is how I came up in the world, is that a brand is how your consumer thinks and feels about your product or your service. And if that's really the definition, I know there's many definitions, then you really have to go back to how is our customer interacting and feeling and thinking about our brand before you just go to that lever of we've gotta do a rebrand.
I totally agree with you. I would add a couple of small things. I would say, well, the Jeff Bezos, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That is absolutely something I love that quote. I mean, I used to be a huge Jeff Bezos fan. I don't know if I am anymore quite right now, but anyway, I would say that's one, which is true. What does it stand for? And I think in the era, I've had a lot of clients who are mid-market clients who have been in existence for like 20, 30 years. And, they've had online representation, I'll call it like that. But they haven't understand the digital game that they need to be playing. And for instance, one of the rebrands recently that we had to do was that there was absolute and utter confusion in the marketplace because they had a name that somebody else had as well in their space. Nobody had ever protected it. Nobody had ever trademarked it.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. So when you're looking at driving eyeballs and even validation, because on a B2B basis, we're talking about validation sites, when you're talking about high involvement, high price services, you're not selling widgets online. So when you're dealing with that and you're having somebody look for something, you're driving traffic that's not relevant to you, to your digital platforms, it's useless. So for every dollar you spend, 90 cents of it goes to another person. So the digital game, I think also is a trigger for a company to want a rebrand because they don't understand what they don't understand, whether it's the keyword. Now it's not only SEO, right? So we've been playing the SEO game for 20 some odd years. Now we're playing AI SEO games. So your content has to reflect an AI SEO strategy. And are you playing that game properly? And are the people that are coming to you or should be coming to you going elsewhere because somebody's doing it better than you?
No, it's much trickier, and I think that the name, right? The name that you choose, you can make it whatever you want to make it if you get behind it, to your point, if you put the right content out there, if you get I hate, influencers, if you get the right influencers talking about your brand, if you position it in the right way, that's what starts to stick with people. So it's definitely more challenging, and it means you have to stay on top of it.
Oh, yeah, so I think the problem that I was having with some of these conversations is that they thought it was one and done. You set it up, you build it, they will come. Okay, no, that's not how it works. Especially not I mean, it doesn't happen in B2C, and it certainly doesn't happen in B2B. You gotta stay on top of your game.
Well, think about I mean, I'm gonna date myself now. Back in the day when there was a brand department, and the brand department's job was to manage the brand, and everybody else just did what they said and got the assets. That's not today's world, right? We all have to live the brand, whether we're talking about it at a conference, whether we're saying something on social media, whether we're sharing anything with a friend or on a podcast. I mean, how you represent your brand is the responsibility of every single person in your organization. And so there still can be a brand department. I don't want to offend anyone who runs a brand department, but your job is a lot bigger than it used to be because now you don't just have your external customers, you have your internal customers, you have your partners. You really have to control that and make sure everybody understands how to represent you.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. It is a 360-degree, view of life now, and I am noticing I was at a Fordham, alumni event last night. I'm on the alumni association. That's where I got my MBA, so I was right in your nei not far from you. It was fun. So I was talking to a couple of alums who a few of them were from Brand, and they had just gotten let go from very big banks who will remain nameless, but we all know who they are. And it's a different kind of play now that they what kind of people you want are on and around brand and brand strategy and so on, and to your point, everybody has to represent it. And also, are you putting out messages that you cannot fulfill on? So, one of my favorite examples is I had a client, again, they'll remain nameless, but they were a big telecommunications company, and we won't go further. And they were so hyped on, "We're easy to do business with." And they really wanted that positioning, and I was like, "You can't own that." And they were like, "Yes, we can." I said, "You absolutely cannot, and I'll tell you why. I called your 800 number. I called talked to your customer service. I did this, I did that. I had 5 touch points that I proved to them that doing business with them was a nightmare."
And their slogan was, "We're easy to work with."
Like, more or less, they wanted to own the positioning, "We're easy to," we're the easy to do business with brand, right? I'm like, "No, you can't do that because you have no credibility." The first time a customer engages in something that I tried to do as my audit, because I do a brand experience audit before I rebrand a company, I do a brand experience audit. I look at all their channels, I look at all their endpoints, I look at all of their, how they would show up in any sort of channel. And all of a sudden, I'm like, "You can't own you're easy to do business with. You're a freaking nightmare. We can't engage. We can." Somebody hung up on me. I couldn't get through to customer service. Your pricing was opaque. Like, you didn't get back to me for 4 days when I asked you for a proposal. Like, no.
I mean, but that right there, Monique, that's an example of how the brand team and the team I'm sure you went in and work with has to work across the organization, right? To deliver that brand promise means the call center, the website, the finance team, everybody has to deliver that brand promise if that's the brand. If they can't, I mean, maybe they have to change the brand promise, but everyone has to be able to deliver it. You know where I'm getting my new brand research from these days? My 16-year-old. I mean, well, it's just amazing what they're seeing and how they're interacting with brands and then bringing it back to you and you're thinking, "How do you know this?" Well, I mean, it's all happening, uh, you know, on this device. And so we've gotta just keep evolving how we manage brands because the it's moving faster than we are.
That's right. It's moving faster than we are, and I know, yeah, and I noticed the inconsistencies across channels, right? So if you're trying to project a certain image and a certain persona and a certain value prop one place, and then you drop it to try to pander to another audience, they see that. The 16-year-old can smell bullshit faster than a 66-year-old, you know what I'm saying? And they smell inauthenticity like a mile away. Now, sometimes, okay, get it. Potentially, there's brands that they love and they get attached to that I don't love for a lot of different reasons, but whatever. The point is that authenticity is back to that brand promise. It's like, are you BS right now? Are you putting it on? Because if you're putting it on, you're gonna have success and it's gonna be short-lived because people are gonna smell BS.
Well, maybe, that goes to the point of you probably have to think in a simple way, right? In a way that you can be authentic and you can execute and own it. If you wanna expand it, but if you start too big, 1, people aren't gonna understand it, and 2, you may not be able to be authentic because you're trying to keep up with something that doesn't really make sense.
Exactly. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better. So, but now we're moving on to people. When do you know, and both inside and when you've been a consultant, When a leadership team has stopped being honest with each other, what changes first in your opinion?
A couple things. I think the first is communication, right? That's how you feel behaviors change, and usually you can see that through communication. Also, I think feelings, right? That you feel a little bit of like a lack of trust, a lack of alignment, maybe even frustration or fear. I hate, that's really it's true and you feel it. I don't know if you've read a book by Patrick Lencioni. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. The five dysfunctions of a team. Um, some people it's a terrible everyone's like, "That's a terrible name for a book," but it isn't because you don't forget that. You 5 dysfunctions of a team. But really what he says and what I believe myself is everybody has to be on board, and understand not only where you're going, but the direction. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier. You can debate it and debate it, but at some point you've got to get on board with where you're going. And that comes down to honest communication, right? Being able to say, I don't agree with this and here's why, hearing it and then convincing each other like so that and that takes trust to have it takes trust and courage to speak up and be able to say what you think, but then it also takes trust and courage to believe, okay, I'm going to get behind this no matter what. And I think, if there's ambiguity, if there's somebody who's looking for that throat to choke, and it's not, to use some sports analogies, one team, one dream, it's a problem. And I think, so going back to what changes in addition to communication, I think it's attitude, right? Because when you're not feeling like you're a trusted individual, your voice isn't being heard, you start to change. You start to feel, like you're fighting an uphill battle. You're pretending to be in something, but you're not. Your values aren't aligned even potentially. So, I think it's unfortunate because we spend so much of our time at work, and I think most of us want to be successful. We want to do the best for our team, and I think this is where you have to really decide what kind of leader you wanna be, and we have to practice what we preach, and the best leaders I've worked with think of it this way: we're gonna do the hard work to get aligned here because our job is not to just tell people what to do, it's to remove obstacles, it's to make things easier so that everyone around us can be successful, right? And I think that's why it's so important and so disappointing when leadership teams fall apart because it is a trickle down effect and everybody feels it.
So well said. Coulda come out it coulda I agree with every single word you said, literally. I really do. And the other thing I heard myself say last night, and I think I give much more credence to now than I ever have, is this whole alignment, value system alignment. And another woman who I love, who was on the podcast where I was supposed to see her yesterday, Véronique Gebet, right? Véronique Gebet, lovely name, by the way, and her perfumes are die for. Her perfumes are to die for. She has a fragrance house, used to work for all the big ones, and Monique 20, by the way. It's still operational. It's a discount code for 20% off her stuff. So, anyway, she'll love me to put that out there. Anyway, so Veronique said something very interesting, and I really, really believe it now more than ever, and it was, as a leader and as an employee and as a team member, if you don't align, she wants diversity of thought, of expression, of thinking, not necessarily of size, shape, color, and creed. She wants diversity of that, but the one thing that has to be aligned is the value system. She says, "We can make any team work if the value systems and our true north are the same. If our value systems are different, it will never work." And she's right. So I said to this woman last night, I said, "Look, I want you to take a beat. You just lost your job. I get it. There's ego, there's the money, there's the what do I do next? I got shot, I didn't see it coming." All of those things are valid. And what did you learn from it? Were you on that interview and did your gut do something when you were in that interview? Like, what was the physical expression of non-alignment that happened to you when you were interviewing? What red flags? Because I just had a red flag with a service that I purchased for myself. And I had that moment of It's not sitting with me, and I fought it, and I overcame it with this, when this was speaking to me, and I dismissed it. Never dismiss your gut, it's always right. If you sense that that leader's not in your value system and they say something that's just not sitting well with you, it's not gonna go well. Get out.
I 100% agree, and I think in this day and age, it is our responsibility to be a leader, a valueless led leader, because others are looking to us too, right? They're looking and saying, "Are you in do you buy into this? Should I follow you?" I just heard, the CEO of Chief, Allison Moore, she just said something about herself in a talk yesterday where she's learned something about herself, and, I believe this very much if you're a strong leader. She talked about fellowship, right? And the energy that you put out there and the way even if it's, "Hey, I have high expectations," or, "I wanna operate at a certain level," that's okay. Because you're asking people to you're telling them who you are, what you're about, and you're saying, "Follow me, and I'll bring you along." And that's kind of what this value system is. I love that because, I've gotta believe in it myself, for others to believe in me, and for us to move forward. So, I think it's of the utmost important to have a strong value system, and if a leadership team can be aligned around that, that's magic.
Right? I know, I love that so much. So on a personal note, Ms. Baker, what do people not know about you that would surprise them?
I mean, some people do, but I wanted to share this. So I'm a Bikram yoga devotee. I mean, listen, it's funny because not everybody loves this, right?
I know.
It's hot. So you sweat, it's not the smell, it's a challenging um it's challenging. It's hard, it's kind of gross, but here's what now I'm going to get to the good parts of why I do this. I've been doing it for 20 years, if you can believe that, and it has a ton of health benefits. It brings me so much clarity, and it's a 90-minute class, but yes, they offer 75 and 60 for those who wanna give it a try. So it's a commitment, right? It's a commitment, but it's, like, my thing that I have committed to. I try to go at least once a week, and, it supported me, and it keeps me sane, and I feel healthy, and I it makes me feel young, and, yeah, that is my thing, my secret thing, I guess. Not so secret now.
Okay, not so secret now. I'll share one with for me later, I guess. Um, what's one thing you believed about growth or leadership that now you completely question?
So I think it's this idea that you have to fight your way to the top, right? Um, I mean, listen, it's no se you have to work hard, right? You have to show up, you have to put wins on the board, and you should not be an asshole, right? Those are, like, I think some fundamentals. But you don't have to play dirty, and you don't have to, like when you're getting there, you don't have to elbow other people just to get your way to the top, and I think about something a former boss said. He said that, "If you wanna get to that next level, do the job you were hired to do really well." Right? So that idea that just show up, keep doing the hard work, keep putting those wins on the board. Now, I do think you have to be cautious. I hate to say it. This is the real world. You can't trust everybody, and not everybody's looking out to help you. I mean, sadly, that's the truth. But I do think that's changing, and I believe that for women especially, it's imperative that we help each other. It is. It's imperative. And we were talking about this, I think, a few weeks ago. Anna Blue, who I want you to meet, she talks about this mean girl phenomenon, right? And I won't go into all the details, but she's looked at, like, kind of the research and the science and the way when you start with how we came into existence as girls, we were sort of taught instinctively to push against each other, to fight, to position ourselves. And really, that's inherent, and it's not something we intend to do, so we have to change our whole mindset around how we work together, how we help each other, how we support each other. I mean, look at what you do every day. Look at the book you wrote. Look at this podcast, right? Look at I'm a member of Chief. I'm a member of Project 1490. I've joined the board of Thrive, Women in Travel. Like this is an evolution. We need to understand that we're all trying to get where we wanna go, but you can't do it alone, and we have to help each other, and if women can help you could take help from men too. I have plenty of male mentors in my life, but helping each other is so important, and I'm grateful, to be honest, because I was fortunate to have some women early in my career give me good advice and kind of show me the way. I mean, I worked in a very male-dominated industry, and so to have those women who were being conscientious and doing what we're talking about now, way back then, made all the difference in the world. And, one other thing I'll say, again, it was something that came up at Chief, is this idea of always having your next chapter ready. So Monique 2.0 being ready to go, Stephanie 2.0, like we and again, these are new beliefs, right? I'm learning. We should be learning new things, trying new things, meeting new people, challenging ourselves, putting ourselves out there so that we can evolve as the world is evolving. And I definitely don't think that's what we were taught, a million years ago. But I think that that's the world now. And we cannot do that unless we start helping each other out because you know things that I don't know. I know things that you don't know, and together we might help somebody else out. So I guess that's the thing that you don't have to do it alone is maybe my biggest takeaway.
I think that is my takeaway as well, and the reason I'm doing like you said, the reason I'm doing it now, I'm a couple of years older than you, and that I don't know if it has anything to do with age or maybe it's the industry, but I feel like they were all male dominated, right? And one of the reasons I started my own business, so many years ago, I did not my first mentor passed away. And so I only had her for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh." And so one of the reasons I did write the book was this notion that I wanted to be able to mentor people in a way that I had not been. Life is not easy, but it can be made more simple, and I think, American women do, and I say American women as a both American and a European woman, I see that sometimes we overcomplicate things. I really do believe there's so much complexity in how we work and play and live and breathe and spend money and do all the things. There's a very consumeristic aspect of how we put certain pressures on ourselves and things like that. What people think of us and it's like, stop. Like nobody gives a shit, honestly. But anyway, and I talk about that a lot. So for me, going up through the ranks, it was either me or another woman. If there was a woman in the room, I didn't get in the room. So now I feel like I have an inherent responsibility to make sure that the room is filled with qualified, smart, engaged women. That's my job. My job is to prepare other women to be in that room, saying what they say and earning their place in that room. And if they don't know how to get there, I'm going to get them there.
All right, that's a shout out, and I have been the only woman in the room many times, so I'm with you if this is a pledge or whatever we have to do. But one thing I want to add to that, because we're both mothers, is your point of how we've overcomplicated things. I think for our children, it's gotten worse, right? And this another woman just said this the other day, like now because of the phones and all these, now they're questioning everything because they see it. We luckily didn't have to deal with that. So we've overcomplicated it for our children. So, I know you have a daughter. And so what you're saying is critical for helping her and her peer group, right? And her friends. And as a mother of boys, because, I think it's a critical for me to make sure they understand where women have sat and where they will sit in the future and what their role is in being men interacting with women in the room and that it should look very equal in their future.
Yeah, it's very interesting for me to watch my son interact with his girlfriend or my son to interact with his sister and the kinds of things they say. For them, they don't really get some of the decisions I had to make as a mom 20 years ago. They don't get it. They're like, "Well, why did you have to take the train? Why did you have to, leave the office first and relieve the nanny? Why didn't daddy do it?"
They ask that though. That's awareness.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and it's just how, my daughter interacts with her husband. She calls him partner. I was like, "Okay, you call him whatever you want. You're married to him. Okay, I don't care what you call
Yeah.
him." Like, like,
Different way of looking at it.
right, so it's very, very interesting. Anyway, so wrapping up, having said all of this, what would you tell your 30-year-old self if you had an opportunity to talk to her?
Well, I would tell her something you already said. I'd say, "Trust your gut." I would tell her to find allies. I would tell her it's your responsibility when you're starting out in your career to make your boss look good. And I would tell her that it's okay if your son loves the nanny more than you, even though God, it broke my heart, but it's okay, and it's a good thing. And then the last thing I think I'd tell her, and I thought about this, is, I'd tell her I'm proud of her. I'd tell her that I'm proud of the decisions that she made. She took a demanding job, had a son, then she took another demanding job, and she had another son, and, she did the best she could, and she provided for those boys, and she learned a lot. So the other piece of that I would tell her is, all that energy that you had to get through that? Store it. Find a place to store it. Use AI, I don't know, so that when you're 50, you can, like, go and get it and put it back in. That's that's what I tell her.
That's awesome. And FYI, when you're 60, you can go back into the tank and pull it out too.
Oh, good. Okay, so I need to be like okay, good.
Hey, listen, it's not they don't come with instruction manuals, all those good things, but, I think inherently, based on some of the comments that I've gotten from my grown children, they don't listen a lot, or they don't give you the impression that they're listening, but by George, they are watching. And the comments that I've gotten about, being an entrepreneur and being a role model and working as hard as I did or I do, and it's not gone unnoticed. So just when you think they're not paying attention, I swear to you, you think they're completely clueless. Like, do you not know how fucking hard I'm working? They do.
They do. Thanks for saying that.
And in the weirdest moments, you're like, you you were listening to that?
I have what? I have seen that. You're right. It's in my 16-year-old, it's starting to come out a little. You're right.
But you don't get the satisfaction when you want it. It's sort of like on their time, on their schedule, when they want, if they want. It's like they pops out of nowhere and you're like, "What?"
Alright, so capture those moments, right? When they have them? Okay. Good advice, good advice.
Yeah, I try. So, thank you. Do you wanna leave the audience with any nugget or any, like, great career advice?
Okay. Well, the worst advice was not to take the job that I just left after 14 years. I was told, "It's a startup, you have a young baby at home," like, not a good idea for anyone. Worst advice. Best advice, and this kind of I'll leave the people with this, was to take the job in Europe that I did when I moved to Amsterdam. I worked, abroad for 5.5 years, and, people were like, "Why are you gonna leave now?" Like, a lot of my friends were settling down, getting engaged, buying homes, it was sort of like that moment when people were settling, and I was about to take off and go across the world and take on something completely new. I wasn't engaged. I was with my boyfriend, now husband, so but I wasn't engaged, and you know what? The opportunity seemed like a once in a lifetime thing, and I didn't wanna give it up. So I guess what I'd leave this audience with is when you are a little bit scared, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it's showing you that you can take on more than you think you can, and that's always the case. And in this case, it was. It was a little scary, but I knew go for it. And that's what I hope all of us women can do in our futures is take chances, opportunities, ask each other for help in case we're a little bit worried, and just leap, just go for it.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you're the best, Stephanie Baker. I'm giving you a virtual hug. Hug, 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 hug. If anyone's listening to this and saying, "Oh, geez, Louise, that's us. That's our company. That's what we need." You know where to find either Stephanie, Monique, or both. We have had so much fun here unpacking business, operations, branding, marketing, all of it, baby. It was so much fun. I invite you guys to please, for the love of God, hit subscribe and do a review of the love of God, for God's sake. And I invite you to make it a great day. Thank you, possibility seekers. Bye bye. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique de Maio, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at moniquedemaio.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.